What do you look forward to this week, in particular, in the debate on the royal decrees?
I think, right now, with the new breed of members of parliament, we have people with a lot more knowledge and less of, the
old style.
Yeah, the old style. So I think we can look forward, to a lot more substance to be debated, and that's good for Thai politics. Unfortunately, I do not subscribe, to one of the decrees, particularly the one that allow the Bank of Thailand to go and intervene in the corporate debt paper. That I don't agree with.
And you don't have issues with the two other decrees?
The other two, I think, less so. Perhaps more of a concern, particularly the first decree, that allows the government to borrow the portion that is not for immediate compensation, the 400 billion for future investment. I think it is necessary for the society to keep a close track, to make sure that, according to economic principle, as long as you can, spend the money and make sure that the economy grows at a rate higher than the cost of borrowing, then you'll be all right. But if it's below, then you're on a downward escalator. So we have to make sure that the money is spent wisely and also, without anything under the table.
So back to the decree that you don't subscribe to. You were with the Bank of Thailand before, right?
I was.
I thought you would have agreed to the bank playing a prominent role in this scenario. So why were you so against? Were you not happy with this decree, the one that authorizing Bank of Thailand to help with the liquidity in the market, right?
Well, it goes beyond the natural role, of the central bank, as I understand it. They copy the role being played by central banks in the developed countries, but you have to take into account that these are rich, developed countries, and this is not something that we should always try to copy. The important thing is that according to the existing, the main law of the Bank of Thailand, the bank already has the power to lend to financial institutions as much as they want, in order to take care of the liquidity of the market.
Even without this new decree?
Yes, even without this. But to issue a decree, it makes for the government to underwrite a potential loss for the Bank of Thailand to go into this venture up to 40 billion, which I think that is unfair to the taxpayers.
So that decree would allow Bank of Thailand to provide soft loan for small and medium sized.
No. Soft loan is the 500 billion. I have no problem with that. It's the decree that I have problem with is the 400 billion
liquidity
intervention into the commercial paper market. As I say, the law of the Bank of Thailand already allows for that. But to do so, to do it via a decree, meant that the Bank of Thailand asked the government to use taxpayer money to underwrite its loss up to 40 billion baht, which I think is not necessary. And it is, in a way, a step to help the financial market that benefits the very large corporates that issue commercial papers, and you don't have something similar for the SMEs.
Yes. So if one of the points raised by the opposition is the concern of possible favoritism, right? If the Bank of Thailand has the authority to intervene and buy bonds from certain corporations.
Indeed,
so
that too.
Are you concerned with that too?
That too, because according to the usual protocol, the Bank of Thailand would have financial institutions acting on its behalf, shielding it from doing it, from going directly into this. And by going directly and becoming the creditor of these corporations, imagine what will happen if there is a default. And the Bank of Thailand has to sue and become the creditor in court. This is going to be messy.
And as former finance minister, if you were to report, if you were to discuss and to reply to opposition camps in the debate, how would you like to make your point?
Well, I wouldn't have proposed this law in the first
It's
place.
too late now. There's nothing you can do about it now.
Yeah, but what do you expect to listen to explanation from the government side?
I think they will say this was something requested, an idea originated by the central bank itself, and they had to go along because this was something, other central banks in the world also did, things like that. But in my opinion, this is money going to the rich instead of going to people of the poor. And this is going at the time when people are still not getting paid enough for their existence.
You mean you don't even buy the basic rationale for authorizing the Bank of Thailand to intervene in this manner?
No, I accept the fact that the Bank of Thailand has to look after the market. And as I say, the law existing allow them to do that fully to any amount they wanted already. But of course, no government guarantee underwriting for their losses.
But now the bank now has the responsibility on its lapse, no escape from it. So what would you be advised to the Bank of Thailand how to do it best?
I not only advise them, I threaten them that if you make a wrong move and if they are caught causing losses to the general public, to be compensated by taxes out of the country, and if it is proven that this was done in an improper manner, they'll be jailed. So that was my warning.
And what would be the worst thing that the Bank of Thailand could do in this scenario?
Well, giving money to companies that are sponsors of the political parties backing the government, that would be the worst thing.
But if you can recommend the overall economic packages in this COVID-19, what do you like to see in helping the people having difficulty?
I think the government, in coming out with a decree to borrow, they need to borrow quickly in order to help people overcome daily existence. But up to a certain point, beyond that, the best thing they can do is to get rid of the emergency decree, allow people to go back, and be confident that if we have less than or fewer than 50 new cases per day, the system can take care of it. So go and spend, go and enjoy shopping again, go and eat in restaurants again. If the government could do that, then people can look after themselves. So of course they need to borrow in order to help people get over to the other side of the crisis. But they also must realize, I think they know that after COVID-19, the behavior of people all over the world would change. It will affect travel, it will affect hotels, it will affect, work from home will affect office space. It will affect many things, and it will take quite a few years, right? And not only that, I found that in the years going up to COVID-19, the Western countries had been managing their debts badly, allowing the private sector to go into overdrive, to be highly geared, to borrow too much. And they are going to need time in order to work this out. So if countries in Asia cannot expect any consumption, any power of consumption from the West for quite some time. For quite some time. The government should invest money, even borrow, and even bigger than 400 billion. It could be quite a few, quite a lot more, but they should invest it wisely in order to allow people to be more competitive, to have a better competitive advantage going forward. And as I say, they should ask the communities, the rural communities, to think, to get together and think and ask themselves, under the new landscape, economic landscape after COVID-19, how they would make their community competitive, in which way, whether it'll be in agriculture, whether it'll be in high-end tourism, whatever, and then ask how much the government could help them in order to build infrastructure to help them cope. And this is going to change the direction of the ship, the commercial ship of Thailand, to the right direction in order to take full advantage of the world after COVID.
But how would you rate the overall performance of the government in dealing with the pandemic? Of course, the government has been patting itself in the back that, we have been successful in reducing the number of new infections.
No, there are two sides.
Okay.
There are two sides. There is the side of controlling the spread of the virus, and the side of the economy.
Okay.
They had one side, but they are going to fail on the other. And that is going to be tragic, because the best thing is to win on both sides, but you have to balance. And I have a feeling
you have some doubts about the performance.
Very much so, because they are too overly concerned about demonstrations, flash mobs. So they kept the emergency decree. And this, how can people go and make local holidays, with this still in existence?
And what about Thai Airways with restructuring plan and to go through the law of bankruptcy? Do you agree that this is the right track for Thai Airways?
I think it is the only track available. The only track available to the Thai Airways. After the open sky policy, with the introduction of budget airlines, found it difficult, to compete. Yeah. They just didn't have the competitive edge that they used to have. So any mishap, any misinvestment, whether picking the wrong route or any problem related to corruption, whether within or outside, would cause them to suffer. And then COVID was the final straw. So there is no other option other than to put them into restructuring.
But now the national flag carrier is no longer a state enterprise after the finance ministry decided to dilute its stake in the carrier. Is that good or bad news ahead of the rehabilitation?
Well, it is necessary because once you put the company into the process, into the court process, you have to allow the court, to take over, and the process has to be done, in laying off staff according to the commercial law, without the protection of the state agency. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I think it's a little bit odd, for the government to transfer 3% shares. Instead of selling it to the public openly, they sold it to
Why
you pack one. I think unnecessary. I really can't think of why. But this is going to cause the creditors to raise questions and to.
In what sense? Because when you pack one fund, it's supposed to be a juristic entity, right? So it's not related to the government as much as a state agency.
I agree, but in reality, people still think that the government has some kind of influence over what you park one. But not only that, instead of selling it through, instead of suspending, the sales of shares in the stock exchange, when they are going to submit the plan to the cabinet. Which could be either way, right? Yeah. The best thing is just to suspend the trading of shares. They didn't do that, and the shares in April up until May went from 3 baht something into 6 baht something. It hit ceiling 8 times. Right. Pretty odd. And not only that, once they decided, for you park to buy the shares, they say, well, the price to be agreed upon would be 7 days trading before the decision date.
Which was quite low.
Oh, well, no, which was quite high, which was quite high.
Yeah, high, not low.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that raised suspicion, well, at least in my opinion. At least on the date, of submitting the proposal to the cabinet, the people in the Ministry of Finance already knew the option they would present to the cabinet would be for court process. Right? They should have asked for suspension, but they didn't. Yeah. Even after that, even today. So this raises suspicion. Yeah. And in the process, in the court of law, decisions have to be voted upon by creditors. And the only way to be successful is to win trust of everybody. And how can you win trust of the creditors, if you are not open with your hands?
And what do you expect to see in terms of detail of the rehabilitation of Thai Airways to try to convince that it's on the right track in order to save Thai Airways?
Well, that will be up to the administrator, to craft, put together a plan and then present it to the court, right? But basically, they will just ask the creditors, how much haircut can you get, can you give, and then they'll have to decide whether to inflict pain on the staff, pain on the shareholders, and then once they have that, everybody agrees, then they put it to the court.
So that would be quite painful period of Thai Airways.
Very painful, and the idea, is to spread out the pain so that it doesn't lie with any particular party unnecessarily.
And when it has to lose status of being state enterprise, how do you think it will affect the position of Thai Airways?
No, once the case has been accepted by the court, shareholders has no power. So the only thing is to get rid of the status of being state enterprise, so that the law of state enterprise does not superimpose on the law of restructuring. I think that's all.
Yeah.
All right, Kun Virathai Satiprapop, the governor of Bank of Thailand, says he's not seeking his second term when it's up in September this year. So under these present circumstances, with this kind of responsibility being put on the shoulders of Bank of Thailand, so what kind of governor of the central bank you think you would look forward to?
I will hope we get someone with a strong backbone. Someone, well, to have someone intelligent is easy.
Okay.
Because in the Bank of Thailand, if you call for PhD, you throw a stone, it will hit a PhD 1 out of 4 times.
Okay.
But, very intelligent people,
okay.
But you need someone with a heart to withstand.
Is it easy or difficult to find?
That's difficult. That's difficult because you need someone who are able to stand up to the pressure from politics, stand up, for what is right.
So that means if the governor of Bank of Thailand had the backbone you just mentioned, he would have said no to this decree, right?
I hope. I hope he would not
don't
propose.
Drag central bank into this mess, right?
Yes, indeed. I'm sure. He if we turn back the clock, and if it had been Dr. Pui, I'm sure he wouldn't have proposed something like that.
And you would have said no too, right?
Oh, indeed. Of course not. Of course not. I wouldn't have proposed, but I would have gone way in to try to provide enough liquidity to make sure that the market has enough liquidity. But basically, I believe that liquidity cannot solve solvency, and companies that overborrow, and if you overborrow and then COVID takes away your income, and you find it difficult to survive, restructure.
Yeah.
Either reduce your capital, like minor holding. Okay. Issue more shares, reduce, accept that you are going to be a smaller person, but make sure the company survive. There are many ways to do that.
And under this global situation of the global economic impact from coronavirus, how do you see the whole world is going to go through this difficulty because threatening of global recession?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't bring the graph with me. But, if we look back at the U.S., the level of private debt compared to GDP, this is basically level of debt that companies and households have with regard in relation to their yearly income. It went up and down, in a huge way, in a big wave. The bubble burst, when? 1930s. A huge increase to about 145% of GDP. And then the bubble burst and they had to restructure, through liquidation, court cases. It came down to 40. And then after that, after the Second World War, it went right up again. For 60 years, it went up, but not to 145, 170% of GDP, and burst, when? The hamburger crisis.
Wow,
So basically, we had a huge bubble going on in the US. And after the bubble burst, you know what they did? Instead of allowing companies, to go through the pain, lay off people, restructure, sell assets, they pumped in more money. So the adjustment of that ratio of the debt to GDP ratio came down from 170 to about 140. But still the same level, when the bubble burst during the Great Depression. So we are, running a very, very big risk, of the U.S. going into a big, turn down next year. And the same behavior went on in Europe also. So we are looking at a high risk of a global slowdown in the Western world next year. And once that happened, wow! Imagine what would cause, to the Asian countries.
That's right.
And right now, the Thai government are still have not yet been prepared for this. Very risky.
Okay.
So it means more opportunity for China?
No, in fact, when you have a global slowdown, demand for industrial production in China would also go down.
Yeah.
It affects everyone.
Yeah, and it means China will have to tighten that belt because China doesn't have energy, doesn't have any food, whatever. So it means lower income for everyone. Very, very scary.
Yeah.
So this is exactly the issue that we should be paying most attention to, right?
This is why I say, if we bask ourselves, in the limelight that we had won the war of COVID, we're going to be missing out on a big storm coming. And I think it'll be coming next year.